My name is Sarah Mitchell, I'm 38, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Oregon. Life had become a routine rhythm of work, groceries, and solitude after my divorce 2 years ago. My daughter, Emma, had recently started college in another state, leaving the house emptier than ever. I often filled my evenings with cooking, cleaning, or simply staring out the kitchen window, watching the lights turn on in the homes around me. One person whose house I always noticed was Daniel Cooper's, my neighbor across the street. He had moved in about 6 months ago, a quiet man in his early 40s with a friendly smile and an old golden retriever named Max. We'd exchanged a few polite good mornings when collecting the mail, and once he helped me carry in a box of groceries when my hands were full. Beyond that, we hadn't spoken much, though something about him radiated calmness, the kind that makes you feel you can talk to someone without judgment. It was a Thursday evening when I noticed him sitting on his porch alone, petting Max as the sun went down. I had just finished making a big pot of homemade chicken stew, too much for one person, and on a whim, I thought, why not invite him over? Maybe it was loneliness or maybe I just wanted some human conversation that didn't come from the TV. I wiped my hands on my apron, walked across the street, and called out, "Hey, Daniel." He looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Hey, Sarah, everything okay?" "Yeah, all good," I replied, slightly nervous. "I made too much dinner tonight, and I was wondering if you'd like to join me. It's just chicken stew and bread, but it's warm." For a moment, I thought he might decline out of politeness, but then he nodded. "That sounds great, actually. I'd love to." As he crossed the street, I felt a flutter of excitement, not the romantic kind, just that warm feeling you get when you know someone is about to break the silence of an otherwise quiet evening. Inside, the house smelled like thyme and roasted vegetables. I quickly cleared off the dining table, lit a small candle, and placed bowls out. When he walked in, Max waited patiently by the door as if he knew he wasn't invited but didn't mind. "This looks amazing," Daniel said, taking a seat. "I haven't had a home-cooked meal in weeks. My cooking skills end with microwave dinners." I laughed. "Then you're in for a treat." We started eating, and the conversation flowed easier than I expected. We talked about everything, from my job as a high school counselor to his work as an architect. He told me how he'd moved to Oregon after losing his wife 2 years earlier to an illness. I felt my chest tighten. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "That must have been hard." He nodded, eyes distant for a second. "Yeah, it was. Some days are better than others." Moving here helped. There was a comfortable silence for a moment. The flicker of the candlelight reflected on the wooden table, and I realized how rare it was for me to have someone to share dinner with. "I guess we both know something about starting over," I said, giving him a small smile. He met my gaze and smiled back. "Yeah, I think we do." As the night went on, we talked about our favorite movies, childhood memories, and small-town quirks. We laughed when Max barked from the porch because he wanted attention, and Daniel went out to feed him a biscuit. By the time he was getting ready to leave, the stew pot was nearly empty, and I felt lighter somehow. "Thanks for coming," I said as I walked him to the door. "No, thank you," he replied. "It's been a long time since I've had such a good meal, and good company." That night, after he left, I stood by the window watching him walk back to his porch. He turned once, waved, and smiled. I didn't realize then that one small dinner invitation would change so much in the months to come. The next week, I found a small container left on my doorstep. Inside was homemade banana bread with a note. "Thought you could use some breakfast, Daniel." I laughed aloud, touched by the gesture. The bread wasn't perfect, slightly overbaked, but I ate every slice. A few days later, I saw him fixing his fence, and I walked over with lemonade. That became our rhythm, small, kind exchanges that filled the quiet spaces in our lives. Sometimes, on Saturdays, I'd see him jogging with Max, and we'd stop to chat. I learned he loved sketching old buildings, and one afternoon, he brought over his sketchbook to show me. His drawings were beautiful, old barns, river bridges, even my house from across the street. "You drew my house?" I asked, surprised. He smiled shyly. "It's got character. The light hits it nicely in the mornings." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. "Well, I'll take that as a compliment." Soon, dinner invitations became more frequent, sometimes at my place, sometimes at his. We'd cook together, listen to music, and share stories about life before everything changed. It wasn't romantic, not in the way people expect. It was comforting, healing, like two souls who had been through storms now finding peace in shared silence. One rainy Sunday, the power went out across the neighborhood. I sat by the window wrapped in a blanket when there was a knock on the door. It was Daniel, holding a flashlight and a thermos. "Figured you might want some coffee," he said. I grinned. "You're a lifesaver." We sat together on the couch, sipping warm coffee while Max snored by our feet. The sound of the rain filled the room, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel lonely. Funny how simple things feel special when you share them, I said quietly. He nodded. It's what makes life bearable again, I guess. Dash dash dash. Months passed, and our friendship became something the entire street noticed. Neighbors would wave when they saw us gardening or fixing mailboxes together. Some teased us gently, but we both just laughed it off. In spring, I organized a small community dinner in my backyard, an idea that Daniel encouraged. I wanted everyone to connect the way we had. People brought casseroles, desserts, and folding chairs. There was music, laughter, and children running around. At one point, as I looked around, I caught Daniel's eyes across the table. He smiled, raising his glass. I smiled back, realizing that this connection, kindness, shared moments, was exactly what both of us had been missing. After everyone left that night, Daniel helped me clean up. The fairy lights were still glowing softly across the backyard fence. You know, he said, stacking plates, you brought this neighborhood to life tonight. I shrugged. I think we did. He smiled, setting down the plates and looking at me for a moment. I'm really glad I came to dinner that night. So am I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be. He didn't need to say more. That evening, we stood in silence under the lights, grateful for how one small act of kindness had grown into something beautiful. Dash dash dash. As the year went by, we became family in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with friendship. He'd bring me coffee on busy mornings, I'd help him walk Max when he was working late. We celebrated holidays together, even decorated our porches with matching wreaths at Christmas. One morning, Emma came home from college for a break and met Daniel for the first time. She noticed how natural our friendship was and later said, "Mom, you look happier." And she was right. Happiness wasn't loud or dramatic. It was in shared dinners, warm laughter, and knowing someone cared. When summer came again, Daniel and I planned another neighborhood dinner, this time together from the start. We hung lights, grilled food, and told stories that made everyone laugh. It wasn't just about us anymore, it was about a community built from one small dinner invitation that grew into lasting connections. That night, as everyone said their goodbyes, Daniel turned to me and said, "You know, that first dinner changed everything." I looked at him, smiling. It did. It really did. And as we stood there, watching the stars appear, I realized that sometimes, healing doesn't come from grand gestures or perfect plans. It comes from sharing a meal, a laugh, a quiet moment with someone who simply shows up.